Meetings Act reading.
Thank you. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Pinelands Commission was given in compliance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act by providing notice to all municipal and county clerks within the Pinelands area and to the Secretary of State on December 20th, 2017, and to the Commission's officially designated newspapers on December 20th, 2017, and by posting a copy on the bulletin board in the Commission's office.
Ms. Wittenberg, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Ashman, Commissioner Avery, Commissioner Barr,
Here.
Commissioner Chila, Commissioner Galetta, Commissioner Howell, Commissioner Janarone, Commissioner Lloyd, Commissioner Lobauer, Commissioner Pikaliski, Commissioner Prickett, Commissioner Quinn, Commissioner Rowan Green, Chairman Irwin.
Here. All right, we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, moving on to our agenda. First item is the adoption of the May 11th, 2018. We have open and closed session minutes. Motion.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, even if a commissioner was not here last month, as long as he or she has read the minutes, they can vote on it.
Okay, excellent. I'm sorry, we had a motion?
Yes.
And the second?
Second.
Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? All right, all in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Moving on to committee and staff reports. We only had one subcommittee meeting, and that was the Policy and Implementation Committee meeting, for which I will handle the summary here. The meeting was on May 18th, and the first item was the adoption of the April 27th meeting minutes. The committee also recommended certification of the Mullica Township's Ordinance 6-2018, revising permitted uses, water quality standards, and zoning boundaries applicable to Pinelands villages of Weekstown to recognize a pre-existing non-conforming use of a boat building. The committee also received an update on the re-examination of the long-term economic monitoring program and efforts by staff to improve the report and consider what special studies should be undertaken. A report submitted by a consultant from Rutgers is under review at this time, and the OIT office has been consulted regarding the creation of an interactive website where users can download the data for better ease of use. And lastly, the executive director informed the committee that the FAA and South Jersey Transportation Authority are interested in changing the terms of the 2004 MOA to protect grassland habitat in exchange for further development of the AC airport. The FAA wants the habitat moved away from the runway due to concerns with airline safety and potential bird strikes. However, no action was taken on that matter at that time. Are there any questions on the P&I committee summary? All right. Moving along. Staff reports.
Auditors are here auditing. Things are going well. I was over in the carriage house. I haven't seen them. And she tells me she barely sees them, but things are going well, so that's good. Construction on the Pinelands exhibit is scheduled to start June 18th. They don't anticipate coming into the lobby area until sometime late July, August timeframe, so quiet in the beginning, just having the back room, shouldn't interfere with us or meetings, but you may see various stages of construction free around. For anybody who's done work on their house, you know, even though they tell you, you won't hear them or see them, you hear them and see them all the time. So that will be starting, and that will be interesting. Their schedule hasn't completed in mid-September, so I figure they'll be done by the end of October. I don't want to set up any promises that won't be met. We had an interesting meeting with friends from the Joint Base. They reached out to us. They have replaced someone who sort of serves in their environmental coordinator position, Matt Bell, who we work with on other issues, called and wanted to bring the new guy in so we could meet him, get to know him. It was very positive, very friendly. It's a good sign. We've made some good relationships there, and it looks like now they'll continue with this new person, so we were happy about that. With regard to continuing discussions on the South Jersey Transportation Authority, as the chairman mentioned, we are scheduled next week to go out in the field to meet with South Jersey Transportation Authority staff, FAA staff, DEP, Fish and Wildlife staff, to look at the habitat. The concern there expressed by South Jersey Transportation Authority, supported by the FAA, is that that's not a good place for bird habitat. There are safety concerns. There were, shortly after that habitat was established, FAA issued, I think it's called certification, nationally saying, don't put habitat near runways. So this has been going on for a number of years. We're concerned about timing. This is nesting season, so we didn't want to do anything right away. Plus, nobody's told us it has to be done right away. So we're going to go out and look at it. They've started to look at other habitats that they could purchase that would replace this habitat, and it's sort of a process. I wouldn't be surprised if July P&I, they might come in to start to talk to the commission to change an MOA. That's the process that we can start with P&I. So I'm hoping to get them in here for July so we can start to move ahead. I think nesting season ends August. So
You've received nothing in writing from anyone
through other
trying to force our hand
places,
on it.
we get things, I get phone calls saying I'm going to get a letter, then I don't get the letter. We've gotten documents on our own. Stacy's has a very good relationship with people at FAA from when we first did this memorandum of agreement, so that's been very helpful to us. So we're dealing with them, we're dealing with, South Jersey Transportation Authority, DEP is fully engaged, so I feel comfortable about it going forward. That's next week, that's that meeting. The only other thing I wanted to mention is we had an interesting meeting with Farm Bureau and a consultant that's working on transfer of development rights issues throughout the state, as the state TDR Bank, Pinelands, and then sort of us last because we're sort of the one that works, and the others are especially Pinelands has some difficulty. And it was an interesting discussion about potentially finding other sources for people to buy PDCs outside of the Pinelands, in economic growth areas where they're getting state funding or other perks. And there may be legislation that comes out of it, but it was sort of an intellectual discussion that we enjoyed. I'm not sure anything will come out of it, but should some legislation pop out of it, we were part of the discussion in the beginning, and that was interesting.
Nancy, are you saying that the discussion partially touched upon the possibility of getting credits from outside of the Pinelands and using the Pinelands?
That people from outside of the Pinelands would buy credits for their projects.
It might be in another county.
Could be in Bergen County, where there's a lot of desire for economic development, where people are coming in and getting a lot of benefits from the state for that development, economic incentives, and that projects like that. That's sort of
any other areas, any other states, perhaps.
Other states? No, this was central to New Jersey.
Yeah, but I know not buying from outside the state, but I mean, is there any precedent for this? I'd be interested in that.
It's very initial, but we were happy to do that.
It would take legislation to
Yeah,
allow
absolutely.
this, right?
This would be
And,
legislative.
and this would presumably promote a PDC market and increase the prices of
Yeah.
PDC.
We were, and Peter Fury said, he's the Farm Bureau, we've been talking to him, we tried to do this PDC enhancement rules, we didn't get anywhere, and he's remembering that discussion, and he knew that we had this interest, and it's, ultimately it helps farmers and landowners, so it was good to have him there, it was good. Curious. Okay, that's all I have.
Good morning. I don't know if you remember in our budget, we had some money set aside to do a study of stormwater basins, how well they work in terms of water quality renovation. And we're probably going to continue that project in the next fiscal year. DEP has announced a $10 million grant program. Grants are due, and applications are due in August. USGS is interested, so we're trying to put together a group to look at stormwater basins to try to measure what actually comes out of the stormwater basin. And, does the stormwater basin renovate, to what extent, to which parameters, things like that. And so we might have a project coming back to you sometime later this summer. We had an interesting call, something called the Pinelands Infrastructure Trust Fund. I don't know how many of you remember that or know what I'm talking about. In 1985, the state authorized $30 million in bonds to help Pinelands regional growth areas with infrastructure, and part of the main part of the goal was to use PDCs. We put together a package. We actually have a Pinelands Infrastructure Trust Fund master plan. I'm sure you've all read it. I'm sure. We would have to amend that to relook at it. What's happened is that many of those were loans and grants, but the loans have been coming back, and so the original $30 million was taken almost down to $0, and now it's been, with payments back, it's now back up to $15 million. So there's a fair amount of money that could be made available for the growth area. So they were interested. They put together an annual list of what they might do, and they were asking us if we should put something in. We were interested in putting something in. I'm not sure this is the year to do it. We're talk to you, see what kind of. We have a lot of flexibility, but there's a lot of restraints on it too. As I said, it has to be regional growth areas. It has to be certain kinds of infrastructure. In the past, we've only done sewers. We could broaden it to water. Transportation is also permitted. Fun. So we'll be getting back to you, maybe looking at sometime in the next fiscal year, some kind of a request for proposals or redoing of a plan. The way it works is we take a plan to you, you consider it and adopt it. Then that plan, there are specific projects. Those projects go then to the state legislature and they authorize the project. So each project has to be authorized by the state. You have to prioritize them, select which ones you want. We've done that. Most of it was done in the late 80s. So it's been quite a while. As I said, paybacks are here and we can use them as well. Long-term economic monitoring, you heard about the briefing at P&I. We have the draft. It's a 2-year report. I don't know if you remember, we didn't do one last year because of these factors. So it's a 2-year report. And it's in Nancy's hands. It's sort of a draft. So hopefully we'll be getting that upgraded soon. And the only other thing I wanted to mention, we also mentioned, I think this year, about doing an archaeological field school, doing a dig somewhere, and actually looking for investigating something. And they're targeted at a place called Brotherton, Indian Reservation in Chemung. Got a lot of approvals, they have a lot of interest. We had a little snag. Our partner in Monmouth University can't do it now. So we're going to have to find somebody else to do it. And we have an interested party, Society of Archaeology, is going to partner with us. So more to come, but we hope we can bring that off. I think that's all I have.
Larry, on the Pinelands Infrastructure Trust, we would approve a new plan and then we would approve individual projects as well, or?
Yes. Yeah, well, in the plan, it would have ranking criteria. We would have gone out for requests for proposals, brought the projects back to you, showed the rankings, and you would select those from those rankings as far as the money could go. And it can be in the form of loans and grants. We have to make that decision as well. In the past, it was 40% grant, 20% loan. The other 40% being loan. We'll have to do that. So that's another aspect. There's also the criteria for how you judge it. So it's a little complicated.
So just so I understand. So we adopt the criteria and send out an RFP.
Correct.
They come back. We choose the projects. Do those projects then have to come in for development approval?
Well, they would ultimately, yes. But the next step is you put them in the plan and the priority that you've agreed to. We send that to DEP. They implement the actual applications and things like that. They do through their infrastructure trust fund. So the engineering work, pre-work, and all that kind of stuff. And then it also has to go to the state legislature for funding, specific funding for each project. The funds are available, but for each project they have to be. Then once that's all done, then they would come in.
When DEP reviews the projects, they make a determination on permittability up front. I mean, I remember doing that at DEP, so I assumed for hours they would reach out to us, so we wouldn't go through all this trouble and then find out we couldn't issue a permit. But that's one of DEP's roles. So I mentioned it because I hadn't thought about how that would work. I just remembered it worked that way there, but I'm guessing we would coordinate with them to make some generalized determination up front.
We would have done that very early. We wouldn't be making an award to a project because they had a building.
Good morning, Commissioners, members of the public. I just have three brief items. First one is, in talking to Mullica Township officials last week, they informed me that the Sweetwater Casino restaurant on the Mullica River had received site plan approval from the township, and that they anticipate, at least at this point, starting construction in the fall of this year. That's a major issue for Mullica Township. They'd very much like to have that restaurant reconstructed.
And that is,
The second matter that I wanted to discuss briefly was we've been engaged in a couple of matters related to Right to Farm Act in New Jersey. We were in municipal court for a matter in Mullica Township that raised the issue once again about how Right to Farm interfaces with the Commission's regulations. The Right to Farm regulations do not supersede state regulations, so that someone is obligated to meet the Commission's regulations to the extent those regulations are also contained in certified municipal land use ordinances. There's a question as to how to proceed at this moment, whether or not the Right to Farm regulations still require that if a municipality cites an individual, issues a summons, and to take them to municipal court based on a commission regulation, whether or not that matter has to go first to the county ag boards. The State Agricultural Development Committee sent down a guidance letter to us about a week and a half ago, advising that they felt that those matters, when a municipality does issue a summons on a agricultural issue, matters still have to go to the county ag board, and the county ag boards can make the determination to what extent the commission's regulations apply or do not apply. So the staff is discussing that matter and trying to decide what our next step will be to discuss the matter with the State Agricultural Development Committee to try to streamline the process as much as possible. And the last matter I just wanted to mention was Southampton Township officials have contacted us. They're asking for the staff to assist them with a matter in the township that residents are concerned about. It's a commercial use in the township, and to the extent it's meeting the Commission's regulations. So we will be meeting with the township officials next week on that matter. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chuck. Chuck, did I understand you say you went to municipal court, and if so, what happened there?
It's probably best not to discuss the specific matter if that's okay with commissioners.
Thank you.
Anything over on this side?
I have one more.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure I fully understood what you said, and I'm just curious. Typically, my impressions, usually like the finance can do something more stringent than perhaps the state law, but that, or a municipality can have a stronger provision than the finance commission, the CMP, but they can't have a lesser. Are you saying that finance regulations regarding the right to farm can't be stronger than state?
No, I'll try. It's complicated, and I apologize if I didn't explain it clearly. I'll try. Stacy can help. Stacy can help also. So
An answer no would be okay.
So the Right to Farm Act and the regulations that implement that act are clear that it does not supersede state regulations. The Commission's regulations are state regulations. So it's clear that our regulations are not superseded by the Right to Farm Act. And to give you an example of that, if the Right to Farm Act somehow does not require an application for a certain type of use on a farm in the Pinelands area, based on our regulations, an application of the commission is still required. The Right to Farm Act cannot supersede the commission's regulations. The difficult, more complex issue is when our regulations are then incorporated into a township's land use ordinance directly. And we send a letter, or a municipality issues a municipal summons for violating a regulation that's both a commission regulation and a township regulation. So the question is, does that individual who received that summons from the municipality, are they still entitled to head to the county agricultural development board for a determination of whether right to farm applies or doesn't apply, even though the Right to Farm Act does not supersede state regulation? So there's somewhat of a bureaucratic hitch that's involved that we're trying to sort through. And of course, our municipalities are anxious only to do one process, not two processes, both municipal court and county. Correct.
Well, not exactly.
Well, it depends who you ask.
It's a process question. It's not a substantive question. Right to Farm Act sets forth a process. It limits the municipality's ability to restrict through its ordinances farming activities on a farm, right? Just generally. So it sets up this process that if a farmer or the municipality wants to enact something, or if there's a violation on the farm, that it has to go to the county ag board first to determine whether or not the activity falls within the rubric of right to farm. Because the comprehensive management plan is implemented through municipal ordinance, it becomes a process question. The Right to Farm Act says, municipality, you have to go to the county ag board. What we're saying is, but really, it's not the municipal ordinance that's the cause or reason for the violation. It's the comprehensive management plan, which is a state regulation. The SADC says, we don't care if it's a state regulation. From a process perspective, the municipality is the one enforcing it. Therefore, as a matter of process, they have to go to the ag board. Now, for those of you who are familiar with right to farm, with whatever the ag board does, ultimately there's a right of appeal to SADC. It's just that the municipalities are getting frustrated because they have to go through this additional process, a potential appeal at SADC to enforce the comprehensive management plan, which we're asking. And that is a result of the fact that the legislature did not give the commission any form of enforcement authority. Otherwise, as with DEP, we would be able to issue an administrative order, notice of civil penalty violation, and proceed down that track. But that authority has never been given to the commission. So the primary mechanism by which the comprehensive management plan is enforced with regard to violations is through municipal action.
See why it's confusing.
That's all I had.
Thank you, Chuck. Paul, did you have anything?
Yes, just a few things real quick. Good morning.
Good morning.
So Nancy mentioned the exhibit project, which we're obviously very excited about. And just this week, my colleague Joel Mott and I categorized and put together an inventory of all the exhibit artifacts that will be featured here. And we have almost 50 of them. So during that time, during the permits, that did afford us the opportunity to continue to dig for additional artifacts, not literally, of course, but getting them from some of our friends, such as Double Trouble, Batstow, RCBC, and I'm working on a rare piece of glass from Millville, Wheaton Arts. So these will all be incorporated in the exhibits. We're going to have an even better exhibit than before because of our efforts to continue to search for these things. So we're going to have stuff that nobody has. So we're excited about that. Meanwhile, the Pinelands Summer Short Course is July 19th, as I referenced before. Registration is going really well on that. This year, we printed registration brochures. Last year, we did not. We relied solely on emails, and we found our demographic and our people prefer paper. So that's what we're going with, and we're finding that we're going to have far greater registration as a result of that. Meanwhile, the invitations went out for the newly elected officials seminar. This is our Pinelands orientation that we give each year to newly elected or appointed officials in the Pinelands. We typically get about 50 people at that event. It is set for July 24th. Commissioners are more than welcome to attend, and the public. It's done jointly with the Pinelands Municipal Council. And this year, we're going to have a special presentation on conformance. Last but not least, our native gardens are doing really well right now. That will be incorporated as part of our exhibit sort of offerings. And the bog garden in particular is thriving. We have some things in there that are blooming for the first time, including the turkey beard, which is extraordinarily difficult to get to bloom. So if you want to check that out afterwards, commissioners and members of the public. That's it.
Follow up with the poll. All right.
Yeah, I have a comment. I did look at the garden this morning. I noticed there's a struggle in there between different. It's a part of natural succession for some plants to take over others, and I think that's one thing you can see there. I'm not sure what that plan is that's dating the pitcher plant.
Oh, I see.
Space there, but
Right.
it's a natural occurrence. But do you know what that plan is?
Yeah, well, it depends on which side. There's
Yeah.
two things in particular that like to spread by rhizome, particularly the New York aster, and then also the false asphodel are
Probably
two
the
things.
asphodel.
Yes, yeah. And one other thing that's about to bloom that's also starting to spread is the bog asphodel, which is a plant that can only be found in the Pinelands and nowhere else in the world. So that's a cool thing that we have in there. I am trying to keep on top of them from taking over the pitchers. But no.
Part of nature, right?
Yep.
Part of succession.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
All right. We have one public development application in front of us today, and that's for a installation of a 1.42 acre ground mounted solar facility for the Evesham Township School District. We have a motion on that resolution.
Second.
Any questions or comments or anything from the staff on this one?
In going through this application, I realized in reviewing the application that while this is a wonderful development, solar panel development, renewable energy is a very helpful advance and especially helpful in the Pinelands. I'm sure we're going to be seeing more of these from a variety of applicants, not just schools and other institutions, possibly from farms as well. And what came to mind as I read through this is that we do not have a mechanism in the CMP that allows us to evaluate whether or not an applicant has the opportunity to install the solar panels or other renewable source on an existing structure, as opposed to in open space as we have in this application, or even possibly in forest area, which may come to us in a future application. And I would love to see the Policy Implementation Committee do some kind of study of that question and see whether or not there's something we should be doing to amend the CMP to instruct applicants that we would like to see them do an analysis before coming to us and asking that they get to install such a facility on open ground or in forest area, that they first tell us whether or not they've exhausted the possibility of installing on an existing structure, so that we're not taking away open space in the Pinelands.
Good idea. I've heard some municipalities looking at that as well.
Yeah.
Any other comments on the Evesham resolution? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion moves. Let's move on. We have one resolution related to a municipal ordinance, and that is certification of ordinance 6/2018 regarding amending the chapter of the code of Mulligan Township. We have a motion on that one.
Moved.
Anything from staff? Then we had a presentation in P&I meeting. Any questions, thoughts from commissioners? All right, hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right. We did have another resolution relating to the interested party conversation that's been going on for a while. I'm sure everybody's heard about. We have decided to table that today. There were multiple commissioners who reached out to myself and the executive director with questions not only for the executive director, but for the deputy attorney general, commissioners who were not able to be at the closed session meeting, as well as commissioners who aren't here today had questions. I know it's a sensitive subject, so I want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to get all their questions answered prior to us bringing that up for public debate.
We'll be glad to provide further clarification where requested.
So up next, we have public comment on public development applications and resolutions where the record is not closed. So this is for anything where record is not closed. If it's something that we've already approved today, there'll be a general public comment session at the end of this meeting. Just scrolling through here, trying to find the list of open public development applications. Nancy, do you have that list? All right, so the open public development applications we have are South Jersey Transportation Authority, to traffic ramp, Jersey School Development Authority, demolition of a building, DEP, Division of Parks and Forestry, removing to improve visibility in Bass River State Forest, and DEP, forestry activity in Brendan Burn Forest. So if you have comments on any of these applications, we'll go one at a time. I think we have a lot of people to speak on a couple issues here. Please try to keep your comments to around 3 minutes so we can give everybody time to speak. We'll go from there. So you had your hand first. Please give your name and where you're from when you get to the microphone, please.
But there's certain things that we're going to use. Those in certain categories, I would say that the historical aspect, the recreational aspect, the environment aspect, and the business aspect. So those. On the historical aspect, these trees, these particular trees, were planted by the CCC, grow up with loblolly pines that you don't see. Gorgeous, beautiful, rise to the sky, really beautiful. A lot of olive pines down in Chesapeake, with community for sailing masts, really straight and tall, very beautiful. Also, there's white pine plantation, also planted by CCC. One of the first civil conservation board began with the projects. Historical thing right there. They're kind of trees. That's the historical aspect. Very well written. Not all that down. The recreational aspect is, of course, we've got disaster reports there that all these nice trails down the biking. I've seen many older folks walking through there, frequently there. That is interesting. Recreational aspects. address environmental all that concern the trees that are in the areas. That's one of the always that there. The business aspect is kind of interesting. Place that the private line having what's the business aspect. And we have this idea of just replace that old fire tower. It's just homes, hills, so it's what we do for just replacement. Make it taller. Make the fire tower taller. But this has implications because fire protection is so important. What we do here, they have help others around the country protect the fires in a better way. Having a focus there for how to best protect the fire early.
Hello.
All right. We good now? Somebody else over here put their hand up first. It was you, sir.
Morning, Commissioners, Director, Executive Staff. I appreciate the opportunity to address the Commission, and I'm here on the same subject, I believe, as Mr. Dowling. And I appreciate his comments, and they're all quite accurate, actually, in terms of his concern for the environment. And I think we all, coming from the community surrounding the Pinelands and in the Pinelands, share those concerns. However, I've been in public service, emergency service, for almost 40 years now. And I was formerly the chief of police in Eagleswood Township. My present role is chief in Little Lake Harbor and also the director of emergency management. And we have had any number of serious fires there that really have devastated and threatened to devastate vast areas of our communities. I recall in 1983, we had one that wasn't detected as promptly as we would have liked. It got away from the fire service, and it essentially devastated the center of the township of West Creek. More recently, in 2007, we had an issue, I believe, that was ignited on the range at the Warren Grove facility, and it ran all the way from the range through a vast section of the Pinelands and ended up in Barnegat on Route 72 before they could actually get a stop. So early detection of these Pinelands fires not only is essential for the public safety aspects in all the surrounding communities for the Pinelands, but it's also essential to the resource itself. If we don't actually promptly respond to and adequately address these issues, we're in big trouble. No question. I respect what happened. My family arrived in New Jersey sometime in the early 1600s. My grandparents both lived in Chatsworth in the 1920s. And in the 1920s, they had just gotten the fire towers up and fully staffed, and they were able to actually start getting responses sooner. The people of Chatsworth, for example, I remember the tales from the family. They used to put the women and children in a section of the Chatsworth Lake because the men were basically cut loose, couldn't protect their homes any longer. So this is really an important aspect that we're talking about. We have an absolutely wonderful resource here in New Jersey when we talk about the State Forest Fire Service. I don't know if you probably have read the article in Rolling Stone magazine that talks about the volatile nature of the Pinelands because of the species of trees that reside there. And the fact that if we don't have adequate mitigation activities, that we're in big trouble. And I think we remain in big trouble. The service has been much more proactive in the last few years in terms of proactive response and control burning and things like that. I own a area of Pinelands myself, and I have a forester, and I'm engaged in the process. But unfortunately, there just isn't enough resources to adequately take care of all that. And the danger of these fires is going to remain regardless of what we do. Now, in a perfect world, I quite agree with the gentleman behind me that the best solution probably would be to put up a taller tower. But we're all wrestling with these massive budget problems. And our governor is no exception. He's come into a situation where he's very much trying to address all the issues, some of which were left him, some of the new things he's trying to initiate. And I'm afraid that the replacement of the tower would take a relatively low priority in the big picture, and we may lose something here if we don't react otherwise. The initial proposal from the fire service, as I understood it, was to remove about 80 acres of trees. They looked at that very carefully. They had some concern from the area, and they pared that down to 19, and now I understand it's down to 16. At 16, they tell me that they will have almost complete utility of the tower back, perhaps until such time as we're able to do a better, more permanent solution, like employing newer technology, not all of which will work here, but newer technology certainly might be something we consider. Or in a perfect world, like I said, a brand new tower, which I think would be helpful. There are some recent examples where Bass River wasn't able to detect a fire that was much closer to Bass River because of these trees obscuring the view, and it delayed the response. Fortunately, in those cases, the Forest Fire Service was able to redouble its efforts to put out the fire before it destroyed even larger areas of the Pinelands than it did, as it were. I think it was 800 acres, the one from April. I actually drafted a letter to the Commissioner of Environmental Protection. You guys have a copy, but you haven't seen it yet. And it kind of lays out our position. The letter was signed by both myself as the OEM director and 3 of my fire chiefs, 2 of whom are with us today. And I think it's probably fair to say that I'm speaking for them, although they're certainly able to speak for themselves. With all this being said, I want to bring us back to the CCC aspect. That's something that's always fascinated me, and I also ride my bike in the area and always been conscious of the monument. But we lost 4 firemen from Eagleswood in 1977. I'm friends with the families, having worked in the area my whole life and going to school there. And I can tell you that the scar remains, and there's a feeling that we don't want to pay that price any longer, certainly if we don't have to, and certainly if there's another alternative. Now, I don't like saying, go cut those trees. I don't like it. I have cedar forest, for example, on my property that I wouldn't touch until Sandy came along and killed a section. We then took those trees, and my sons and I have this tree farm, and we make use of them. But I'm very conscious of cutting anything that's alive myself. But when I say to you 16 acres as opposed to tens of thousands of acres and surrounding communities, homes, and infrastructure that is threatened if we don't properly address these wildfires, is in my mind a much greater consideration than 16 acres of these trees, as important as they are. My last concern that I'll leave you with is that the reason that those trees were planted at all was that in the 1930s there were a series of devastating fires. And the monument to which the gentleman refers to is in memory of lost CCC firefighters that were lost in the blaze itself. It's almost, in my opinion, an insult to their memory to allow the trees that they planted to maybe be a threat to modern day firefighters. None of them could have ever intended that result, and yet that's the result that we seem to be facing. So with all due respect, we completely support the Forest Fire Service application to take these 16 acres until a better solution is presented otherwise. And I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you.
Hello. Carl Swansea, Bass River Township. The last time we had public safety in mind, we had this. I just show you this photograph. Excuse my back. I'm sorry. This is Lake Harrisville. In the interest of public safety, this is now Lake Harrisville. Generations of people had gone there and swam and enjoyed the lake. It was needlessly laid to ruin, and to add insult to injury, no swimming signs are now posted as well. Now that was done on the guise of, not on the guise, but the spillways there needed attention. They needed trimmed because they could cause erosion. But they went and devastated the entire area unnecessarily. We don't want that to happen again, Bass River. That was one affront to us. We don't want another. The gentleman talks about 16 acres. That 16 acres is the entrance to our area. Come right off the parkway. That's a clear cut right up to the road. It is going to be 16 acres, and it's going to be a barren. Our biggest employer is Viking Yachts. Second to that is Campgrounds and Lake Absecon. So this is going to be an absolute devastation to the area and the entrance, the gateway to our community. The crux of the issue is the height of the tower, and actually the crux of the issue is the age of the tower, which is currently, if I'm correct, is 10 years beyond its expected life expectancy as it is. And the Forest Fire Service thinks they can maybe be able to eke out another 10 years. So to devastate our area, okay, to lay this bearing at this time does not seem like the best possible solution. I think we can get a little more creative than that. I have a letter from Senator Connors directing Commissioner McCabe, Director McCabe, to assign somebody to me to talk about these solutions so we can rationally look through the things that I proposed in writing to them. 5 times I requested, I've gotten no response. twice to McCabe's office, and I have gotten no response. So I asked the Pinelands Commission to clearly have this vetted before they would consider any approvals to move forward with this project. I reach out, they are not looking at alternative solutions. They have solutions currently in place using technology, using cameras, monitor. They lost in Monmouth and Brick, they lost the use or ability to use one of their towers. They replaced that with a monitoring system with a camera elevated on existing towers, cell phone towers, police towers. These cameras monitor, okay, and that data feeds back to a central area, so one person can monitor many locations, many fire tower locations. That was not even in your proposal. So you look at the proposal they submit, they do not mention it. They also have a very round estimate of $500,000 for a fire tower to replace. Replace the tower that's there, they would go to a 120-foot tower. Current tower is 80 foot. So you can imagine the increased cost. And this is just a bare estimate. So if they relocate the tower, it either has to be replaced, or for tens of thousands, they can put a camera monitoring system in there. So these solutions have not been seriously considered. At least they have not let us know any of that consideration being done. So I asked the commission to fully vet, require full vetting on this issue before we move forward at all. And I have a ton of other information that I would like to share with anybody here. I will leave my name and contact information.
If you have any information, please leave it with the executive director, and she'll make sure that it gets emailed out to all the commissioners.
I will, is it okay if I draft, it's kind of scattered, can I draft something and get it to someone here?
What's the drop dead date? 5 o'clock today.
No problem. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Bill Brash. I'm from the New Jersey Fire Safety Council, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the commission today. Chief Busby did a nice job trying to sum up some of the things that I was going to speak, so I'm not going to speak about that again. But I do have comments. I'll drop them off as well, written comments. But I wanted to address the issue about the technology. Certainly the drone technology is not really compatible. First thing in a wildfire incident is aerial assets get brought in to try to reduce the impact of that wildfire. If there's any drones in the area, it's a problem. And the aerial assets dropping water on the fire may need to be removed. Okay, so drone technology is really not part of this issue. Okay, and a good way to sum it up, I worked with an engineer for many years, and that is that technology is a wonderful thing as long as you don't have to rely on it. And I think the microphone issue we've had this morning is a fine indication of how sometimes technology can fail us. There's really nothing better than a human. And I wanted to bring this issue to the commission's attention because you may not be aware of it. Fire towers are not there just for fire detection. Okay, they are a vital hub if there is a wildfire incident in communications between the firefighters on the ground and the office and the aerial assets, and bringing more resources in that is needed. And a fire observer in that tower can tell a lot from his or her vantage point and relay that information to the firefighters on the ground. Just from smoke plumes and weather conditions that may shift that the firefighters on the ground are not aware of, can be relayed by the fire tower observer. So it's not, that can't be replaced by technology. So the Fire Safety Council supports 100% this particular application to remove the trees, which are non-native to the Pinelands in this instance. And I asked that there is these alternatives, some of which may be worth discussing, some of which really don't apply here. And the technology issue is one that I think that the commission is not really looking to address. At this point, it's whether or not this application for the removal of these trees goes forward or not. Fire Safety Council supports the removal of these trees.
Sir, I'm going to get through everybody else. When I get done, if you want to come up for a comment, you can. Pam? Pam, come on up.
Good morning. I'm Carol Bitzberger. I'm a resident of Bass River Township. I also am kind of the lead of a beautification club. It's an informal group in Bass River Township. And we did write a letter to Pinelands Commission about this issue. And by the way, I hate to say this, but never got a response. We never got a response. But I'll move on. I don't want to repeat the value of the nature, the campgrounds, the forest, the CCC, etc. What I'm concerned about is the tower was built in 1938. We are now in 2018. We have so much technology available that I can't even comprehend what can be done. And I know that Carl Swanseen spoke to the camera company that provided, I believe there are 2 camera systems in Brick and Monmouth. They've been there for about a year, and I'll let him report on, he's talked to the gentleman, I believe it's a Mr. Wright, who is in charge of the camera system of these systems and how he is making out. Now, I just cannot believe that with everything that we can do today with technology, that technology is not the way to go. You build a tower, and that was built in 1938. It's worn out. Okay, we need to move on. What are we going to do? Build another tower and we'll be back in 1938? We should be looking ahead at alternatives to solve the solution. And believe me, I think there is nothing more important than what fire can do, the destruction to human beings, to property, and to animal life. And I sincerely hope that you will take the time and look into other solutions. I just really believe our technology today and camera systems is the way to go. And by the way, I also want to say that in the fire tower in Bass River Township, okay, somebody goes up there from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Okay, and I was told this. Okay, during the months of March, April, and May, October, and November, you look into some kind of camera technology. What we can have is 24/7 coverage every day and during the night. Now, if you, as you look into this, you will find that there has to be training provided, and actually there's going to be more coverage with our new technology. Thank you.
While we're waiting, I just want to remind everybody that the public comment on this application does end tonight at 5 p.m. What we're doing right now is having public comment for you to put your thoughts on record. Not having a public debate here. We're not going to go back and forth. If you have something you want to give to the staff to be considered for their recommendation to the committee, please try to get it in by 5 p.m. this evening. They'll take that into account and use the validity of those comments in their decision. So just want to put that out. It's been a long time since we've had a lot of public comment here, so remind everybody. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Ricky Losowitz, and I'm here to say that I agree with everything that they're talking about with the Forest Fire Service. I just handed you a brochure from the EnviroVision Solution. It gives you on the last page the contact name for Tom Foley, who was in New Jersey, in Brick, and in Monmouth, where this particular technology is in use. And what Carol had stated about the improved efficiency of detecting fires using this system is in fact in this information. It can detect fire, whereas they're saying it would be 10 miles visibility if they cut the trees down. This system automatically detects plumes of smoke for thousands of square miles. You don't need a triangulation of 3 towers. And on the subject of the towers, when exactly was the last time that the government inspected the towers? This tower in particular is more than 10 years past its service life. The steel structure probably already has the brittle fractures in it. Why was it neglected all these years? It seems that there's now a pattern where cost cutting equals tree cutting. You know, we're kind of past that. And the proposal written by the fire service is based on the objectives that I handed you back. The forest management plan for Bass River State Forest in New Gretna was written by Willis M. Baker in 1927. That speaks volumes to me. We're not in 1927, and we stated that we want to plant native species, but in their own objectives, that's not stated. Now, in the present time, that's what we look for. But what this plan is trying to accomplish in the second objective is to replace present scrubby inferior tree growth with thrifty stands of the best species capable of producing the best and largest timber in the shortest possible time. Well, that was the goal. If you look at the fourth objective, the objective was to raise as much state income as possible to the end that the forest would become self-supporting and eventually show a profit for the state. That's where we were in 27. You know, the state wanted income, and they saw that this was a way of getting that income. We're not there today. We are not addressing the problem that the Forest Service sees trees as fuel, and that's their job. Trees are fuel. They see it as a potential fire hazard. But the Pinelands Commission, you know, we're looking at it in a different environmental way. And we take into consideration the Kirkwood-Cohansey Aquifer. This plan not only talks about clear cutting, but they also talk about throwing herbicides down. There's 2 parts to the proposal, part 1 and part 2. And each one, and I'm not clear on this, talks about herbicides. Well, it's right by the Bass River where this is going down. In 2008, I received a small grant from the Department of Agriculture, and that was to raise honeybees. Rutgers instituted a program to try to get residents to bring pollinators back. It's more than 10 years now. I'm still raising the honeybees, and I'm surrounded by Forsyth Refuge, New Jersey Trust, all in Green Acres land. I thought if anywhere in New Jersey, I could raise honeybees easily. And that's not the case. I'm still struggling. We did have Hurricane Sandy, and with that flood water, it took out residents' homes filled with pesticides, herbicides, all kinds of chemicals, fuel from the boats, and that washed the land. We need to be thinking of the Pinelands as a global asset. That's where we are today. We're talking about water shortages on the West Coast. We're sitting on this here. This is more than New Jersey. This is planetary information that we should be receiving as a message today. and you can, minimalize 16 acres. But this is now a pattern. When will it end? Those towers aren't getting any younger. And the technology with the gentleman's information on there is available, and we really should take a hard look at it. For you in the service, this would increase the safety for your members. I spoke with the New Jersey Firemen's Association about this issue and saving the lives of the firemen when they're called in. This technology, it GPSes exactly the location. No triangulation needed. That smoke plume comes up, you're on it like that. You can then, with one station of monitors, have someone in front of that and immediately get that notice that there's a problem. And then you get the weather information because it's all on this computer program. The work has been done for you. It's available.
And can you wrap it up so we can get some other, everybody get a turn here?
All right, I will conclude with a legacy of failure in a way. 1999 to 2016, a total of 30,100 acres were destroyed in these different fires that we had. Major fires near Bass River Fire Tower. I would like to see this total acreage decreased in the future. And this is a way of stepping forward. And I also was told that the money is available to put the new tower in. It would take a quarter of this year's budget for the fire service to do so. But the CCC accomplished it in 11 days. So I don't see what the problem is here. I would like to work towards increased fire safety, and this is a wonderful tool at your service. And I wish you would take a look at it in that light and protect the public safety in a new way of using the technology. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Let everybody finish and then come back in. Good, sir.
Good morning, Frank Renzo, actually Fire Chief in Little Lake Harbor Township. I'm also Vice President of the Ocean County Fire Chiefs Association. We actually passed a resolution last Monday night and we sent it to you guys supporting the. I've heard a lot about this modern technology. To this date, it has been put in place in Ocean County. It may have been put in place other places. We tried to work with other companies. It just hasn't worked out for us so far. The best for us is the towers. And yes, the towers are getting old. It'd be nice if we could replace them, but we talked about budget constraints. And so we just need to find something where it's going to be a happy medium. It's all about life safety and property safety. These towers have helped us over the last 100 years. And not saying in the future we can move forward and do something else, but for today and tomorrow, what we're going to do, I mean, we need to just find a happy medium. I know also Burlington County Fire Chiefs Association was sending letters of notification. I believe they were sending you letters too in support of the tower also. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Good morning. My name is April Dolch from Bass River Township. I really wasn't prepared to speak today, but in sitting here and listening to what people have to say, I think another thing that needs to be considered, the fire towers are past their prime and we're still putting people up there. This is a safety hazard to those employees. Who is going to be accountable and responsible to pay for their injuries that they sustain up there? There is modern technology out there. People need to take the time and the patience to review it instead of just jumping into a decision and clear cutting and raping the land. Whoever was involved in approving what took place at Harrisville should be ashamed and embarrassed by what took place there. And I just don't want to see you all be ashamed and embarrassed by what will take place at the White Pines. I think this definitely needs more consideration. People jump to decisions to do things that are quick and easy and supposedly financially responsible. But if we have to pay a workman's comp claim or a death claim on somebody going up to a tower that's well past its prime, and most of the towers are past their prime and they haven't been maintained, we are still going to have financial implication. Thank you.
Thank you. Can't see it? Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Kathy Gardner. I'm a volunteer naturalist at Bass River State Forest, and I take people on guided hikes once a month through the forest. The area that is being clear cut or wanting to be is truly an enchanted forest. It is the most gorgeous part of the park. You could go there and sit and read a book, and you would just feel like you're in another world. So I'm just stating that my opinion is not to clear cut the trees for that reason. Thank you.
All right, sir.
Thank you for allowing me to speak again, and I'll be very brief. I wanted to address the technology. My background, I was responsible for technology in 3 of the casinos in Atlantic City for over 20 years. So I have a sense of technology. There's always challenges. This technology that they're talking about, the EVS system, is currently fully deployed in Oregon and California. Okay, so that is their primary system. They have done away with most of the towers. I'm sure there are still some, but this system works. When you if you take the initiative to research it and find out locally, as I have, you'll find that the issues are not the system. The issues right now are internet connectivity between the monitoring camera system and the place where the operator sits. This is firsthand from the people that I spoke to at the location. The system was installed with a high-speed internet access, but that was removed after 1 week, and now they have a slow internet connection. So there's some glitches. You have to work with systems to make them work properly. It has been done in other locations. It can be done here, but people need to be trained also. So it's a training and a basic technology connectivity issues that they're having. So those can be overcome. When that is overcome, and they are in Monmouth and Brick. I don't think that's Ocean County. Okay, thank you. So I think that, and this is, again, a reasonable solution. They already have systems there. They have somebody monitoring it, I'm sure, part-time, not full-time. This would be a third monitor system located there. And once you get up, I believe, about 5 or 6 of these camera systems, it really becomes much more efficient. But even at that, it saves $300,000 for a new tower, where it eliminates the devastation of the clear cut of 16 acres now. And they wanted to go for 82 acres. So let's not kid around. Why did they propose 82 acres? Because that's where they're going. So this isn't a 16-acre issue. This is an 82 issue acre. 82. That would be acre issue. Yes. Sorry. Okay, I'm going on. Thank you. I really appreciate your attention to this matter. Thank you.
All right, one more. Yes.
Morning, John Ryan, Bass River Township. I don't really need to reiterate all the things that have been said by my fellow Bass River Township residents. Just want to emphasize that it is a gem. I mean, this area of forest that they're talking about getting rid of is everything that's been described in terms of beauty. It's one of the just loveliest places to walk through in New Jersey, you know. And if you take, you know, that plus the habitat that would be lost, and you consider the history, It was a travesty what they did at Harrisville Pond, and, you know, they, hasn't been mentioned, but over Lake Apsagami was about another, practically half of the north side of the lake. A whole section of trees were taken out sometime between the time they did Harrisville and maybe last summer. And it's just kind of, you know, it's ironic that there has to be, without further consideration of less intrusive alternatives, that something so drastic would be considered and approved. And, you know, if you look at the aftermath of some of these other things that have happened, you know, Harrisville, Lake Apsagami, what's been left behind is, you know, somewhere between an eyesore and just a heartbreaking, you know, just place to be in. You look around and at Harrisville, whoever went out and cleared that left stumps that were obscured by the stuff that was left behind, resulting in people who went there to park and swim, getting the undercarriages of their cars, like, you know, up mounted on stumps that weren't visible, you know. And you consider, eventually everything grows back, forests grow back. That's the beauty of it, you know. But it'll be like well past our lifetime before it's even like, you know, going through that area. It's just gonna, you know, it'll be something that's a scar, and it's a scar that's gonna last for, you know, a long time. So, you know, less is better when you're talking about cutting trees, especially when that seems to be your mission here. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just want to say one thing.
And we need you on the mic.
My name is C.N. Anderson. I live in Molokai on the Sweetwater, Sweetwater on the Molokai. I just want to say that you do this and there's a scar. Yeah, I agree with all of that. But you change things. And as soon as you take down some trees, you got less there to preserve, and then you've got more housing and more people and more roads and less forest. We need to save what we've got. It's not coming back.
All right, seeing no more hands, I'm going to close that portion of public comment. Move on to our next agenda item, which are master plans and ordinance that do not require commission action. However, are there any comments from the staff on this one? No. And is there any comments from commissioners on any of the ordinances we received in our packet? No? Okay. I'll let folks exit, commotion die down a second before we continue.
While we're waiting, I just want the members of the public to know that we will respond to all the comments that were offered today and that were submitted in writing in our recommendation to the commissioners. And if Mrs. or Ms. Bitzberger, who indicated that we had not responded to her, if she'll check with our staff, we need to verify her address because we did in fact send a letter and it may be a problem with that. So if she would check with our staff to verify her address. Thank you. Thank you. Just to the Pinelands Commission at this address by 5 p.m. today. Email is acceptable.
Could you clarify that when the citizen writes a letter? Do you just verify that the commission received the letter, or is the verification really you got the correct?
We do both. We actually send a letter to the commenter that we've received their comments. And then in addition, we address those comments public development application report.
All right, we have one other resolution on the agenda today, and that is to amend the CMP in accordance with the Administrative Procedures Act regarding, let's make it easy, septics. So let's start with a motion.
Second.
Okay. Are we doing any sort of presentation or comment from staff on this?
It's not here.
It's fine.
I'll just briefly, because you haven't seen the full proposal before, but Ed was at the P&I meeting, I think in April, to discuss the implementation report that he had prepared on the septic pilot program. Essentially, that report we do one every few years. That report found that the program continues to be successful. We have 4 systems that are currently in the pilot program that can be installed and are subject to monitoring requirements. So we're currently studying those. So the implementation report recommended that continue. We'll be back in November of next year with a further update on where things are going. But as part of that report, we also recommended that the commission consider amending the CMP to remove the August 5th, 2018 installation deadline for installation of pilot program systems. We don't believe we need the deadline anymore. There are sufficient safeguards built into the program that if there are problems with systems or something needs to be changed or corrected, that the executive director has the authority to do that, to issue temporary suspensions if need be of certain technologies, to change the lot size that might be required while monitoring is ongoing. There's really no need any longer for this hard and fast deadline. So that's basically all the amendments do, is remove that deadline, so that would allow for the continued installation of the 4 systems that are in the program. It would also allow the staff to reach out and identify additional technologies who might want to participate in the pilot program. Can't do that now with the deadline looming. There'd be no reason for them to come into the program now. But if we can remove the deadline, we are aware of some other technologies that are interested in participating in the program. So that would provide that opportunity for more systems to be tested and available for installation. So that's basically a very simple rule proposal. It's really just that, to get rid of the deadline, allow the program to continue. There is obviously an issue of time here. We are up against the deadline. We won't make the deadline. The commission proposes the rules today because we follow the Administrative Procedure Act in terms of rulemaking. It is a lengthy process. So we have to wait for publication. We have to have a public hearing, a 60-day comment period before we'll be back to the commission for adoption of the rule. So that'll take us well past the August deadline, but at least we'll be in process. That's what we're asking today, is just to authorize the proposal.
Any questions for Sue? Any questions, further questions or comments on this resolution? I think we could have this resolution. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, moved. All right, next up we have our general public comment. Do we have a sign-in list, maybe?
Yeah, we have a sign-in list.
All right, first up, Richard Busby. Left. Okay. Frank, I'm sorry, Runzall.
He already spoke.
Want to make sure I hit everyone. I don't leave anybody out. Thomas Pumforty. Okay. Thomas Doherty. Bill Brash. John Ryan. Again left. April Dolch. Harold Fitzberger. Carl Swansea, he left. Ricky Osowitz. Can't just be Smith or Johnson. Kathy Gardner. Diane Bynum.
Hi, Diane Bynum, member, resident of Medford, New Jersey for 65 plus years. Concerned about these trees. If you go back through history and you check out Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, and his history of loving trees and planting trees in the West and here in the East, the loblollies and the white pines were two of the trees that he really, really loved. And they're important, and these were planted by his groups, the CCC, and they're still here, and it's very historic. And I would encourage you to lead a fee. Thank you.
Last on the list, Emil Vito.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Oh, I'm sorry. I got my pen. So I just wanted to make the commissioners aware of a couple of things having to do with sand mining. In December, there was an issue with a mine in Lacey Township, and some additional mining was approved at a particular mine south of Lacey Road, and there was a deed restriction placed on a portion of the property that's not currently in the mining application. The problem is it's not a permanent deed restriction, it's a temporary deed restriction, and it allows the miner to go back in the future, and if it's determined that there are no rare species, then the deed restriction can be lifted. New Jersey Conservation Foundation and Pinelands Preservation Alliance objected to that deed restriction because it's not permanent. And to make matters worse, the very site, it's, if you can just envision this, there's Lacey Road, and then an old sand mine, and then an abandoned railroad. And in the 1990s, the land south of the abandoned railroad was allowed to be mined. The mining was expanded into an area that had lots of rare species. And the consultant's report from the mid-90s says, you know, there are rare species here, and so the surrounding land needs to be preserved if we're going to maintain these populations. But the surrounding land wasn't preserved because now the mine is being allowed to be expanded again further into the forest. And the very thing, the consultants say there are no rare species there, where the mine expansion was just approved in December. But they were there in the mid-1990s. So the only thing that could have caused those species to go away is the nearby mining activity that was approved 20 years ago. So it's like a domino effect. You mine an area, and that makes the species disappear from the adjacent area. And then in 20 years, the temporary deed restriction on the adjacent area could be lifted because the mining that's going to go on now is going to make the species disappear from the next area in the domino effect. So it's like you give permission for a mine, and it means that the deed restriction is going to have no meaning in the future because of the fragmentation effect. So we don't like it. We think, and the commissioners don't know about this because this was not brought to the commission level. It was all done at the staff level. So we think that's a problem. There was supposed to be a public hearing and it was canceled, and then it all got solved without the public getting involved. I could be technically wrong about the procedure there, but that's basically what happened. Now there's another mine in Woodmancy in Woodland Township, I believe, by the railroad, by the old Central Jersey Railroad that wants to expand. And it looks like another deed restriction is being proposed. This one seems like it's better. It seems like it from the Oprah request that this proposed deed restriction might not be temporary. But if this proposed deed restriction is not temporary, why was the last one temporary? Right? Does that kind of say that, oh, maybe we didn't do that right, you know, because of this domino effect situation? And we know there are pine snakes in both places. I mean, when we go and do our work, the Conservation Foundation and Pinelands Preservation Alliance and Herpetological Associates, the consultants that we work with, when we go look for snakes, we find them, we radio track them. And in both of these instances, there are pine snakes immediately nearby. But the consultant for the miner didn't find anything. So we think that the survey protocols were lousy, assuming that the consultant for the miner told you the truth in the first place, and that they really didn't find anything, then it has to be lousy protocols. Maybe they found something and they just didn't report it. That's also possible, because we know that that has happened in the past. So my point is, there need to be public hearings. There need to be better survey protocols. We spent 2 hours last summer right across from the Woodmansey mine in Brendan Burns State Forest in an attempt to try to find endangered species because of proposed enduro bike races that the state was going to permit on this beautiful Pine Barrens hillside. And we found nesting female pine snakes in 2 hours. And now we're radio tracking and we're finding more. And they're right across the railroad from the mine. So we know that there have to be better surveys done, in this case, in Woodmansey. And we think the Lacey Township issue should be reopened by the commission. And I think that's enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, 1 second, please. Nancy, because there were some accusations thrown in that public comment, if you could shed some light on either of those circumstances for the commission's benefit, would be helpful.
So on the Lacey Township matter, actually, generally, I would agree with the commenter's point. But that particular application, the area that's being mined is separated from the area the deed restriction was imposed, which in fact says that they can come back if they can demonstrate consistency with threatened and endangered species. So to say it a little clearer, there's an area being mined, there's a wetland that extends across the parcel with a 300-foot buffer on each side of that wetland. And then there's a rear area of the parcel. The deed restriction that was imposed makes it clear to the applicant that no further mining can occur unless the applicant demonstrates consistency with the threatened and endangered species standard. And I would agree with the commenter, if the area had been immediately adjacent to the area being mined, we wouldn't have entered into that type of deed restriction. I see some puzzled looks, so if somebody would like to ask me a question, I'll be happy to answer it on that matter.
Assuming, not assuming, I know not only have to conform with threatened species standards, but the wetlands standards as well.
Correct.
So there's a buffer of wetlands in the current mine, potential future mine area.
Yes, there is an intervening area of some significance between the mined area, an area that could be mined if the applicant demonstrates consistency in the future. So we did take into consideration the comment that's being offered on the Lacey Township matter.
Just I have not heard of a temporary easement. Curious, is that a easement that has been used in the past by staff and what is the purpose of temporary easement?
It is a temporary deed restriction that the staff has frequently used over the years to protect area that's potential critical habitat. When many different types of applications come into us, the individual has the choice of either preparing a threatened and endangered species survey and the expenses associated with that survey, or imposing this deed restriction. Makes it clear that no additional development can occur in an area unless additional threatened and endangered species survey work is actually done.
So that's actually a change in deed, it's recorded.
Correct.
As other easements are.
Correct.
Thank you.
I think Emil's comment is well taken, and I think the domino effect is a problem. The same thing happened in Ocean Acres. We gave approval for a part of development of Ocean Acres and allowed the developer to come back if he or she could show that there was an impact. But what we ignored was the fact that when you stretch your development one step, you impact the next area, and this is a domino effect, and we're losing. So I suggest we take a very close look at temporary deed restriction.
Sorry, Commissioner, the only observation I would offer on that one is, at least in my opinion, the circumstances that the Commission faced in Ocean Acres were very difficult. Addressing the all the different issues that were present there, and I fully understand the position that your opinion on the Ocean Acres matter. I do believe that the issue that we're dealing with, in particular Lacey Township mine, has many different circumstances, but I understand your position on the Ocean Acres.
As you know, Chuck, we all know we always deal with difficult issues. If they weren't difficult, they wouldn't come here. But I'm trying to find mechanisms to.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Chuck, I'm concerned about Dr. DeVito's comment on the survey protocols. I mean, if the public comes to us and provides evidence that there are presence of threatening when the applicant's expert said otherwise,
A couple of different issues. Whenever we receive, apart from surveys and survey protocols that are undertaken by an applicant, whenever we receive additional information, be it from neighbors or other interested parties, we always consider that information in our review of the application. There have been a number of instances over the years where survey protocols have come back negative, but neighbors and other interested parties have provided information to the commission staff that have resulted in additional survey work being done. So it's just not, I wanted to be clear, it's just not the applicant's survey unto itself. It's all the staff considers. The survey protocols, that's an issue of what is the best accepted scientific basis for conducting a survey to find these secretive species. So there are general accepted protocols from the scientific community by wildlife biologists, herpetologists, on how these surveys are being conducted. The staff requires that the surveys be conducted in accordance with those protocols. For example, to give this a little bit of real life meaning, surveys for certain snake species are to be done in the spring season and the fall season, when the snakes are most active and it can be expected to find those species. If in fact somebody surveyed in the wrong time of the year, if they surveyed in the summer months instead of the spring and fall, the commission staff would indicate to that person that performed that survey that based on the best available scientific information, that was the inappropriate time to conduct those surveys. The last thing I wanted to note that your regulations don't address exactly what's to be included in a survey protocol and what's not to be included in a survey protocol. So it's not a black and white matter of either meet the regulation or not meet the regulation. But I do think that the commission staff requires that applicants demonstrate that the methodologies that they've used to conduct these surveys are consistent with the best available scientific.
On the protocols, though, if we're confronted with a situation where a member of the public provides evidence that the conclusion of an applicant's survey protocol was wrong, get the opportunity to use that evidence to challenge the applicant?
Yes, absolutely. I would, when we receive information, and this has happened in the past, that contradicts the findings of a survey that was done. If an approval is received by that applicant, we would issue one of our letters indicating that the proposal raises an issue with the commission. The commission staff will be conducting a public hearing on the matter. That public hearing is intended to review the information that the applicant provided, other information that's been provided to us by other interested parties as part of that application. The applicant, when it comes to that hearing, has to provide information that indicates why the additional information may or may not be accurate. Ultimately, that would arrive at the commission for a determination on that particular matter. Typically, what happens is an applicant understands the issues that are being raised by the information, additional information that's been provided to the staff. Typically, will conduct additional survey work to address those findings.
So that process followed this case.
On the Lacey Township matter, that application has been completed. The commission has released that permit, which Commission staff has released that permit because we believe at this point the applicant has demonstrated consistency with the Commission's threatened and endangered species standard. So Lacey Township matter now would not be coming back to Rebecca Woodlands.
I see some confusion on commissioners' faces. What Chuck just articulated was the call-up process for a private application. So when Chuck talks about the matter coming back, when the local municipal approval is issued, that has to then be reviewed by staff. The CFP provides that the matter would then be called up, and during the time that the matter is called up, the applicant has the opportunity either to have a hearing here or to take the matter to OAO. Ultimately, then the initial decision, be it from the executive director or from the ALJ, will come back to the commission for final decision. However, the rules also provide that the executive director can determine that if additional information is provided that demonstrates that the application is consistent with the CMP, that the local approval then can be released and a no call-up letter can be issued at that time. And that's what happened with regard to the Lacey matter. It was called up, additional information was provided, staff reviewed that information, and the determination was made that the application no longer raised a substantial issue with regard to conformance. So it followed the process of the CMP. With regard to with Nancy, I believe we're not even there yet. The application is still before staff being reviewed, but Chuck is.
What's referred to as the Wood Nancy is an application in Woodland Township. The applicant received a municipal approval for expansion of the mining. The commission staff received that and issued a letter indicating the application raised what we call a substantial issue with our threatened and endangered species standard. The public hearing for that has been rescheduled a number of times. The applicant is at this point trying to pursue some alternative approaches to resolve the threatened and endangered species issue, but at the moment there's been no decision by the commission staff other than to issue a letter saying that it raises a substantial issue and it's subject to a public hearing before the commission staff.
I'm sorry I cut you off. That we need to clear that up.
No trouble at all. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Dr. Jonathan Peters. I'm Professor of Economics and Finance at the City University of New York. I'm pleased to see that we're moving forward on the long-term economic monitoring report. I've been working with the staff and trying to provide information I think will be helpful. I'm pleased to see that you're expanding the metrics of analysis, and particularly in the areas of tourism and recreation. Two matters that are important that we consider in the future. There is some information coming from the USDA. They do a long-term monitoring of recreational activities. I think the council and the staff should consider that very, very important because there are different uses and different rates of use by state, and there's information available on that. And the second thing is there's brand new data coming out of the Bureau of Economic Analysis. All recreation is not equal in terms of its economic value. Some recreational activities have relatively low economic value, and some activities have rather high economic value. And I really think the commission should include that, and the staff should include that in their analysis of how we maintain the vibrancy and the vitality of the Pinelands region as more and more of the land is taken into protective easements and covenants. So I'll provide that to the staff, and I look forward to chatting with anyone who'd like. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else not on the list? I'll come back to you. Come back after I get to everybody else.
Ryan Rebozo, PPA. You guys had spent a little bit of time talking about this, and Emil certainly did in detail. I just want to second the idea that reviewing some of these rare species protocols can be pretty valuable. Certainly in the case of these mining applications we've reviewed, that's been the focus of my comments, but this also extends beyond just the mining applications and something that I come across quite a bit. I know there are suggestions in place as to how to conduct these surveys for specific species, but routinely we come across issues where there's timing problems where species wouldn't be necessarily active, or in the case of plants, be able to be positively identified in certain times that come up in rare species reports. The same is true for specific geography of sites where certain areas might be ideal locations to do surveys that might be excluded from what's reported on in any information or applications. Also, the arrangement of traps when it comes to projects looking for reptiles, for example. So I think there's a lot that can be gained by taking a little bit a closer look at how we kind of suggest these protocols take place, how we accept them. And in many cases, it'll be small steps that can add a lot of rigor to these surveys and really give us a better idea of what's there, since we determine our process to move forward with some of these applications based on these reports. So I think it would be well worth our time. Thank you.
On the other side, anybody else? Carlos? Going once, going twice, then we're back to Neil.
Thank you again for letting me speak. This comment is about a tract of land that's very close to here, right immediately to the east of the New Lisbon Development Center. It's owned by Woodland Township. It's an area that's a jumble of paper streets and tiny lots, and it's surrounded on two sides by state land, the Department of Human Services, the old Boy Scout camp, and then the third side is the New Jersey Conservation Foundation Michael Huber Preserve, and then across the street of Route 72 is Brennan Burn State Forest. It's a very important piece of land. It's chock full of red-headed woodpecker for the last 15 years or so. I documented nest locations, territories. The Pinelands Commission has a map. It's endangered species habitat for sure. There's no question that it's endangered species habitat. We've got photographs, documents, maps. You have them. However, Woodland Township is in front of the state to get it declared as an area in need of redevelopment because it's tiny little lots. And there are lots of areas like that along Route 72, and I'm sure some of them don't have endangered species because they're very close to Route 72, and they don't have the habitat characteristics that this place has. And so this issue should not just be focused on that particular parcel, right? There are lots of areas along Route 72 where Woodland Township might be able to do a little highway frontage development in the preservation area and get the zoning changes that they need, but not this place. And this place needs to be acquired by the state from the township. The state is willing to do that. And either add it to Brennan Burn State Forest. New Jersey Conservation Foundation is willing to acquire it and add it to the Michael Huber Preserve and make the connections. And so please don't let this thing go down the road of getting all these approvals and then coming in front of the commission and saying, oh, but it's already been declared in need of redevelopment. It's this and it's that and it's this. And because the place needs to be managed for red-headed woodpecker. It's a huge population of red-headed woodpecker, and with tiny manipulations, it could stay that way. It's a magnificent oak forest, and it needs to stay that way. Thank you.
You're going once, going twice. Oh, come on. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Jason Howell, Pinelands Preservation Alliance. I just thought we should end on kind of an upbeat message where we had began this volunteer group in 2015. Actually, Al Horner began it to help Wharton State Forest in dealing with their off-road vehicle problem. Since then, we have expanded, and we have approximately 350 members now, and we've cleaned up around 120,000 pounds of dumping in the Pinelands, Pinelands-wide, not just in Wharton, Winslow, Forked River, Lacey. You know, we've been all over looking for projects that we can utilize this group with. And, you know, it's been really wonderful to work with these people, many of which have come before you and testified on different issues. And we want to continue that. And I hope that we can work soon back in Wharton State Forest, because now that there seems to be more cooperative management coming into state parks and forestry, that we can begin to implement the Pinelands Commission resolution on Wharton State Forest. So I just wanted to know that we're really doing great things out there. We planted 1,000 trees with Emil and New Jersey Conservation Foundation in their Candy Aspen Reserve just last month. And I think there is a very bright future ahead of us. And if we can deal with some of these habitat connectivity issues and the sand mining issues, I think the Pinelands is a great future. Thank you.
Great work. Thank you. We'll close that portion of public comment. Do we have any comments from commissioners?
I have a question for staff. the executive director. And I'm not sure you can answer the question here, but I'm interested in the Lake Absegami forest management work. I don't remember seeing an application for that. It's referred to by the public. I'm not sure to what extent, and I'm not asking necessarily for a response today, unless like to do that, follow up with an email or something. I don't know. But I'm interested in knowing whether an application.
What else got here? Is there any, has there been any update on that federal representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a comment and a request to make with regard to the CMP amendment on interested party that was removed from the agenda today. And that is, I presume by that it's going to be coming back to us. We don't know when. It was on our agenda once before, last December. It got pulled at that time. And more information was provided to the commission as a result of its removal then. Apparently now there will be still more information that will be produced and provided through the DAG to the commissioners. And of course, we've also seen some information from some of us, from some of ourselves. Commissioner Lloyd provided a reference to an ALJ opinion on Lenape High School case that seemed to have direct bearing on that issue. I raised all of this to say there's no telling when this is coming back. But before it does, I, for one, would like to see this matter reopened for public comment. But that means public hearing, perhaps ideally, but at a minimum, it should be open to introduce public comments so the public has the opportunity to respond to some of the new information we've received since December on this question, which is of obvious public interest. I mean, it bears directly on the public's access to filing appeals to the Office of Administrative Law of decisions that we make here. So make that request that we open this up to public comment once again.
And I'll comment on something you started with there. My comments earlier in the meeting regarding commissioners who reached out to me was not regarding new information, it was that they were not present at closed session meeting to hear Bruce discuss what he discussed and would like that opportunity to at least talk to him and review his notes before take it up as public. So just wanted to clarify that before I wasn't clear earlier. Thank you. Any other any comments? Good. All right. Absent that, we need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No, I will not ask if anybody's opposed.